Lucy Morgan wiped her forehead with the back of her hand as she rushed between tables. The restaurant was packed tonight. The Silver Spoon was always busy on weekends, but tonight was special. Richard Hayes, one of the richest men in town, had rented the entire back section for a private party. 20 of his important friends were celebrating something. Lucy wasn't sure what. All she knew was that the tips would be good, and she needed every dollar. Lucy was tired. She had been on her feet for nearly 10 hours already. Her first shift had started at breakfast, and now it was evening. She hadn't planned to work a double shift, but when Donna called in sick, Mr. Peterson had looked at Lucy with those pleading eyes. "I really need someone I can count on tonight, Lucy." She couldn't say no. She never did. The extra money would help with Sam's hospital bills. Her younger brother had been sick for almost a year now. At only 19, he needed special treatments that cost more money than Lucy could imagine. Since their parents died in the car crash 3 years ago, Lucy had been the one taking care of everything. "Table 7 needs more wine," called out Joe, another server. Lucy nodded and grabbed a bottle from the bar. As she walked through the restaurant, she kept her posture straight and her steps quick but smooth. She was good at her job, Mr. Peterson often said she was his best server, reliable, polite, and invisible when she needed to be. Being invisible was a skill Lucy had perfected. The rich people at these parties didn't really see the servers. They looked through them, past them, around them. Lucy was just a pair of hands that brought food and took away empty plates. This was fine with her. It made the job easier. As she poured wine for an older woman with diamonds around her neck, Lucy heard soft music from the corner of the room. A man in a black suit sat at the grand piano, playing something gentle and forgettable. Kind of music rich people wanted in the background, nice enough to show they had good taste, but not so interesting that anyone would stop talking too. "Listen." Lucy's fingers twitched slightly as she set down the wine bottle. She used to play piano, not background music, but real music. Complex pieces that required all her focus and skill. Bach, Chopin, Rachmaninoff, these had been her companions for most of her life. Her parents had recognized her talent when she was only 4 years old, sitting at an old keyboard in a music store, copying a tune she had heard only once. They had sacrificed everything for her lessons. Their small house had always been a bit cold in winter because heat was expensive, but somehow they found money for her to study with good teachers. By the time she was 17, Lucy had been accepted to Juilliard on scholarship. The future had seemed so bright then, but all that changed with one phone call on a rainy night during her 3rd year of school. Her parents' car had slid off the road. They were gone, and Sam, only 16 then, had no one else. Lucy left school and came home to be his guardian. She got the job at the Silver Spoon, then another job teaching beginner piano lessons on the weekends. When Sam got sick, she dropped the teaching to pick up more restaurant shifts. She hadn't touched a piano in almost 3 years now. Sometimes her fingers moved on their own when she heard music, playing invisible keys on tabletops or her leg while she rode the bus. But that life was over. She had made her choice, and she didn't regret it. Sam was worth everything, more bread. "For table 9, called Joe, interrupting her thoughts. Lucy hurried to the kitchen, pushing memories away. The night went on. Lucy moved efficiently between tables, filling glasses, clearing plates, smiling politely at jokes that weren't funny. Around 9 o'clock, she noticed a problem. The piano player was arguing with someone near the kitchen door. His face was red, and he kept pointing at his phone. "What's happening?" Lucy asked Maria, who worked in the kitchen. His wife just called. "Your kid is in the emergency room. Fell off a bike or something. He needs to leave." But Mr. Hayes is furious. The party is supposed to go until midnight, and Hayes paid for music all night. Lucy watched as the piano player grabbed his coat and rushed out, despite Mr. Peterson's attempts to stop him. Then she saw her boss approach Mr. Hayes, speaking quickly with many hand gestures. Mr. Hayes did not look happy. His face grew darker as Mr. Peterson talked, and he slammed his hand on the table. "This is unacceptable." His voice carried across the room, making conversation stop. "My guests expect live music. I paid for live music." Mr. Peterson looked desperate. "I understand, sir," trying to find a solution. Perhaps we could play some recorded music until recorded music at my party. Mr. Hayes stood up, his large frame towering over Lucy's boss. Do you know who is here tonight? The mayor? State senators? People who matter? This isn't some backyard barbecue. Lucy tried to make herself smaller as she slipped past them with a tray of dirty dishes, but Mr. Peterson saw her. A strange look crossed his face. Wait, he said, reaching out to stop her. Lucy, you studied music, didn't you? Lucy froze. How did he know that? She had never mentioned Juilliard on her job application. She had only written some college because she didn't want to seem overqualified for a server position. I what? She stammered. I heard you humming along with some classical piece last week. You knew all the parts. Sometimes you tap your fingers like you're playing piano. Mr. Peterson's eyes were hopeful. Do you play? Before Lucy could think of a way to deny it, Mr. Hayes turned his attention to her. Do you play piano? Lucy felt trapped, all eyes in the nearby tables. We're on her now. Her throat felt dry. I used to, but I haven't in years. Couldn't possibly she'd play, Mr. Peterson announced, cutting her off. He turned to Mr. Hayes with a relieved smile. Problem solved, sir. Lucy's heart raced. No, really, I can't. I'm not prepared. I don't have music with me. I'm in my work clothes. But Mr. Hayes was already looking her up and down, assessing. Can you play classical music, Chopin, Debussy? That sort of thing? Lucy nodded without thinking, then wished. She hadn't. Mr. Hayes smiled for the first time. Then it's settled. You'll finish the evening. He turned to Mr. Peterson. Give her a 15-minute break to get ready, then I want her at that piano. Mr. Peterson nodded eagerly, then pulled Lucy toward the kitchen. You're saving my job, right? Now, he whispered. Whatever you want to raise, different hours, anything, it's yours if you do this. Lucy thought of Sam in his hospital bed, of the bills piling up on her kitchen table, of the treatments he still needed. I want all of next week off to be with my brother in the hospital, she said. With pay. Mr. Peterson didn't even hesitate. Done. In the employee bathroom, Lucy splashed water on her face. Her hands were shaking. 3 years. It had been 3 years since she had performed for anyone. What if she couldn't remember anything? What if she made a fool of herself in front of all these important people? She looked at herself in the mirror. Her black pants and white shirt were the standard server uniform, not exactly concert attire. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She had no makeup on except for a bit of mascara applied early that morning. You can do this, she whispered to herself. For Sam. When she walked back into the main room, the piano seemed to be waiting for her. It was a beautiful instrumenta. Steinway grand. That must have cost more than she would earn in 10 years. Lucy approached it slowly, aware of the curious eyes following her. As she sat down on the bench, she heard someone whisper, Is this a joke? They're having a Waitress play. Lucy took a deep breath and placed her fingers on the keys. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to remember how this used to feel, then she began to play. The first notes came out softly, almost hesitantly. Lucy's fingers felt stiff and unfamiliar on the keys. She had chosen Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece she had played hundreds of times. It was like saying hello to an old friend, but one she hadn't seen in years. Would they still know each other? She made a small mistake in the fourth measure and winced. No one else would notice, but she knew. Her hands weren't moving the way they used to. 3 years away from the piano had taken something from her. Lucy kept her eyes down, not wanting to see the faces of the guests. Were they laughing, talking over her playing, wondering why a waitress was sitting at the beautiful Steinway? But as she continued, something began to change. Her fingers remembered. Each note led naturally to the next. The music started to flow. Through her again, like water finding its old path down a dry riverbed. Lucy's breathing slowed. Her shoulders relaxed. The restaurant around her faded away. She finished the Nocturne and moved without pausing into a Debussy piece, Clair de Lune. This had always been one of her favorites. The gentle, dreamy quality of it felt like moonlight on water. As she played, Lucy finally dared to look up. The room was silent. Every face was turned toward her. No one was eating or drinking or talking. They were all just ... listening. Lucy quickly looked back down at the keys, suddenly shy again. But inside, something warm was spreading through her chest. She had forgotten this feeling. The feeling of being truly heard. When she finished Claire de Lune, there was a moment of complete silence. Then the room filled with applause. Real applause, not the polite kind rich people gave when they were just being nice. Lucy's cheeks grew warm. She didn't know what to do next. A tall woman with silver hair approached the piano. "My dear, that was simply wonderful. Do you know any Beethoven?" Lucy nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Several of his sonatas. The Moonlight, perhaps?" Eyes bright with interest. Lucy nodded again and began to play the famous first movement of Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. This piece was darker, more emotional. As she played, Lucy thought of her parents, how they had believed in her, how her mother would sit beside her during practice, turning pages and offering encouragement, how her father had worked extra hours to pay for her lessons without planning to. Lucy moved from the first movement into the rarely played second, and then into the stormy third movement. Her fingers flew over the keys now, all hesitation gone. The third movement was fast and difficult, with racing notes and dramatic shifts. It required all her skill and focus. Lucy forgot where she was. She forgot she was tired from a double shift. She forgot she was wearing a server's uniform. There was only the music. When she finished, the applause was even louder than before.
Ow.
Lucy looked up, surprised to see people standing. She noticed Richard Hayes watching her with an intense expression. He was not clapping, but studying her face. Carefully, then he walked toward the piano. "Where did you learn to play like that?" he asked directly. Lucy swallowed hard. "At Juilliard," she admitted quietly. "But I had to leave before finishing my degree." A murmur went through the crowd. Juilliard was one of the best music schools in the world. Everyone knew that. "And now you're waiting tables?" Mr. Hayes raised one eyebrow. Lucy straightened her back. "My parents died. My brother needed me. Now he's sick, so yes, I'm waiting. Tables, 2 shifts most days." Mr. Hayes nodded slowly, as if making a decision. "Play something else," he said. It wasn't a request. Lucy turned back to the piano. What should she play? She wanted something that would show everything she could do. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment. Then she began to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto. No, 2. It was a piece meant for piano and orchestra. But Lucy made the piano sing all the parts. Her hands stretched to reach the wide chords. The music filled the room, sometimes soft and gentle, sometimes powerful and passionate. As she played, Lucy felt truly alive for the first time in years. This was who she was, not just a waitress. Not just a sister, she was a musician. She had forgotten that part of herself, buried it under bills and responsibilities and grief. But it had been there all along, waiting. The piece was long, and Lucy's arms began to ache. Her back hurt from sitting on the piano bench after being on her feet all day. But she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. The music carried her forward, through the pain and tiredness, when she finally played the last thundering chords. Lucy was breathing hard, as if she had been running. Sweat had formed on her forehead. She felt completely empty and completely full at the same time. The silence lasted only a second before the room erupted. Everyone was standing now. Lucy saw the silver-haired woman wiping tears from her eyes. Even the kitchen staff had come out to listen, standing by the doors with amazed expressions. Richard Hayes stepped forward again. "What is your name?" asked. "Lucy Morgan, sir." "Well, Lucy Morgan, I think you're at the wrong job." He turned to face the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've witnessed something extraordinary tonight." Lucy saw Mr. Peterson standing near the back, his mouth hanging open in shock. He had no idea she could play like that. No one here did. A short woman with curly red hair pushed her way to the front. "Excuse me," she said, holding out a business card to Lucy. "I'm Nancy Baker from Harmony Records. We need to talk." Lucy took the card with shaking fingers.
I don't
"Understand? I produce classical recordings," Nancy explained, "and I haven't heard playing like that in a very long time." especially not from someone who's been away from the piano for years. She leaned closer. You're rusty, but the talent is undeniable. What happened to make you leave Juilliard? Lucy looked down. Like I said, my parents died in an accident. My brother Sam was 16. There was no one else to take care of him. And last year, he got sick. The medical bills. She shrugged, not knowing how to explain the impossible choices she had faced. Richard Hayes had been listening. What's wrong with your brother? He asked. Kidney disease, Lucy said. He needs special treatments. He's on a waiting list for a transplant. Mr. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. I'm on the board of the Children's Medical Foundation. You might be able to help with that. He took out his own business card and handed it to Lucy. Call my office tomorrow. Lucy stared at the 2 business cards in her hand. Was this really happening? After 3 years of struggle and sacrifice, could things change so quickly? I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say you'll come to my studio next week, Nancy said firmly. We'll see what you can really do on a piano when you're not exhausted from waiting tables all day. Say you'll let me help with your brother. Mr. Hayes added, talent like yours shouldn't be lost to the world because of bad luck and medical bills. Lucy felt tears forming in her eyes. She quickly blinked them away. Thank you, she managed to say. Thank you both, Mr. Peterson approached nervously. Does this mean you won't be working next week? He asked. Lucy looked at the business cards again, then at her boss. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something like hope. I'm not sure what it means yet, she said, honestly. Think things are about to change. Lucy sat in the waiting room of Harmony Records, her hands folded tightly in her lap. It had been 3 days since the night at the Silver Spoon when everything changed. 3 days of wondering if it had all been a dream, but the business card in her purse was real. Phone call from Nancy Baker yesterday was real. Now here she was, sitting in a fancy office with glass walls and modern furniture, waiting to play piano for a record producer. She wore her best clothes as simple blue dress she usually saved for special occasions. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and neat. Lucy had spent an hour trying to decide what to wear. She didn't want to look like she was trying too hard, but she also didn't want to look like she didn't care. In the end, she just wanted to look like herself. Lucy Morgan. A young man with glasses appeared at the door. Nancy is ready for you now. Lucy followed him down a hallway lined with framed records. Some of the names she recognized, famous classical musicians whose recordings she had studied at school. The thought that her own name might someday appear on this wall seemed impossible. Nancy Baker stood up from behind a large desk when Lucy entered. She was exactly as Lucy remembered, short, with curly red hair and bright, intelligent eyes. Thank you for coming, Nancy said, shaking Lucy's hand firmly. I've been thinking about your playing since that night. It was really something special. Lucy felt her cheeks grow warm. Thank you, but I'm very out of practice. That's what makes it even more impressive, Nancy said. Most musicians who take a 3-year break wouldn't be able to play Rachmaninoff like that. Your technique might be rusty, but your musicality that can't be taught. She led Lucy to another room. This one had a beautiful grand piano in the center. It was even nicer than the one at the restaurant. The room was designed for recording, with special walls to control the sound. I'd like to hear you play again, Nancy said. It's not tired after a double shift, not caught by surprise. Just you and the piano, the way it should be. Lucy nodded and sat down at the instrument. Her heart was beating fast, but not from fear this time, from excitement. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. For the next hour, Lucy played everything. Nancy asked for Bach, Mozart, Chopin, Liszt, some pieces she remembered perfectly. Others had faded somewhat in her memory, and she had to stop and start again. But the music was still there inside her, waiting to come out. When she finally stopped, her arms were tired, but her mind felt clear and bright. Nancy was sitting in a chair nearby, her eyes closed. She opened them when the music stopped. You need work, she said honestly. Your hands aren't as strong as they used to be. Your memory isn't as sharp. But the foundation is there. The talent is definitely there. Lucy waited, hardly breathing. Was this going to lead somewhere? Or was it just a nice compliment before being sent home? I want to offer you a contract, Nancy said. Not a big one. Not yet. But I want to record you playing a selection of pieces. We'll release it digitally first, see how people respond. It goes well, we'll talk about a full album and maybe some small concerts. Lucy couldn't believe what she was hearing. You want to record me now? Like this? Nancy smiled. Not today. You need time to prepare, to practice, to get back to where you were. I'm thinking 3 months from now. We'll pay you in advance that should help with your bills in the meantime. Lucy's thoughts went immediately to Sam. It's very generous, but my brother has been taken care of, Nancy said, surprising Lucy. Richard Hayes called me yesterday. Your brother has been accepted into the Children's Medical Foundation program. All his treatments will be covered. And he's been moved up on the transplant list. Tears filled Lucy's eyes. She tried to blink them away, but they fell anyway. Don't understand why this is happening, she whispered. Why you're all helping me. Nancy leaned forward. Because talent like yours is rare. Because music matters. Because everyone deserves a second chance. She paused. Also, if I'm being completely honest, because it's a good story, the waitress, with the hidden talent. People will love that when we promote your recording. Lucy laughed through her tears. At least Nancy was being honest. So what do you say? Nancy pushed a folder across the table. Take this home. Read it. It's a simple contract for 1 recording session with an option for more if things go well. The advance is on page 3. Lucy opened the folder and gasped when she saw the number. It was more money than she made in 3 months at the restaurant. Don't know what to say, she admitted. Say yes, Nancy replied with a smile. And then go visit your brother. Tell him the good news. After that, go home and start practicing. You've got 3 months to get those fingers back in shape. Later that afternoon, Lucy sat beside Sam's hospital bed. At 19, he looked too thin and too pale against the white sheets. No. But his smile was bright when Lucy told him everything that had happened. I told you, he said, his voice weak, but happy. I always told you not to give up on your music. Didn't give up, Lucy said. I just put it on hold. For you. Sam reached for her hand. His fingers were cold. And I love you for that. But now, it's time for you to play again. For real? Mr. Hayes called you? Lucy asked. About the medical program? Sam nodded. This morning? They're already changing my treatment plan. The doctors say this new approach might really work, Lucy. Hope filled his voice, and they think I might get a kidney much sooner now. Lucy squeezed his hand gently. That's amazing, Sam. Why, you'll take the recording contract, he asked. You won't say no because of me? Lucy thought about it. For 3 years, every decision she had made was based on what was best for Sam. What would keep him safe? What would pay his medical bills? What would give him a chance at life? She wasn't used to thinking about what she wanted. I think I will. Take it, she said slowly. But I'll still keep my job at the restaurant, at least for now, just to be safe. Sam shook his head. Always the responsible one. One of us has to be, Lucy teased, poking his arm gently. They talked for another hour. About the contract, about Sam's new doctors, about the future, which suddenly seemed brighter than it had in years. When visiting hours ended, Lucy kissed her brother's forehead and promised to return tomorrow. Outside the hospital, she stood for a moment in the fading daylight. Her life had changed so quickly. Just 4 days ago, she had been a waitress working double shifts, trying not to think about the dreams she had set aside. Now she was going to record her playing. Sam was getting better care. Things were looking up. As Lucy walked to the bus stop, she found herself doing something she hadn't done in a long time. She was humming. The music that had been locked away, inside her, was finding its way out again. And for the first time in 3 years, Lucy Morgan allowed herself to dream about a future filled with music. 2 months passed quickly. Lucy's life fell into a new routine. She still worked at the Silver Spoon, but only 3 days a week now. Mr. Peterson had been understanding about her schedule, especially after Nancy Baker came in for dinner one. Knighton explained that Lucy would soon be recording for her label. The other servers looked at Lucy differently after that. Some with admiration, others with a hint of jealousy. The rest of Lucy's time was split between practicing piano and visiting Sam at the hospital. She had rented a small electronic keyboard at first, setting it up in her tiny apartment. But after 2 weeks, Nancy had arranged for her to use a practice room at a local music school. The room had a real piano, and Lucy spent hours there every day working to bring back the strength and skill to her fingers. It was hard at first. Her hands would cramp after just an hour of playing. She would forget parts of pieces she once knew perfectly. Sometimes she would get frustrated and want to quit. But then she would think of Sam, of the night at the restaurant, of the chance she had been given. She would keep going. Today, Lucy sat in the hospital room, watching as Sam ate his lunch. He looked better than he had in months. There was more color in his face. He had even gained a little weight. "The doctor says my numbers are improving," Sam said between bites of his sandwich. "The new medication is working." Lucy smiled. "That's great news. And guess what else?" Sam's eyes were bright with excitement. "They found a potential kidney donor match. They're doing more tests, but it looks promising." Lucy's heart jumped. "Really? That's amazing, Sam." She reached out and squeezed his hand. "When did they tell you? This morning?" Dr. Patel said it could still be a few months before. "The surgery, if everything checks out." "But it's happening, Lucy. It's really happening." Lucy felt tears in her eyes. For so long they had been waiting for news like this, hoping, but trying not to hope too much. Now, it seemed possible that Sam might truly get better. "Have you told your boss about the recording next week?" Sam asked, changing the subject. Lucy nodded. "Mr. Peterson is giving me the whole week off? He even said he'd come to listen if Nancy allows visitors." "Are you nervous?" Lucy thought about it. "Yes, but also excited. I've been practicing so much. My hands feel stronger now, more like they used to." "Play something for me," Sam said. Lucy glanced around the small hospital room. "There's no piano here, silly. Use the table," Sam pushed, his lunch tray aside. "Come on. I want to see what you've been working on." Lucy smiled and placed her hands on the flat surface of the table. She began to move her fingers, playing an invisible piano. She could hear the music in her head. Chopin's Ballade No. 1 in G minor. It was one of the pieces Nancy had chosen for the recording. Sam watched her hands, smiling. "I can almost hear it," he said. A nurse passing by the open door stopped too. "Watch. What is she doing?" she asked Sam. "My sister's a pianist," Sam explained proudly. "She's practicing for her recording session next week." The nurse looked impressed. "Recording session? Like for a real album?" "That's right," Sam said. Before Lucy could answer, "My sister is going to be famous." Lucy felt her cheeks grow warm. "Sam, stop it. It's just one recording. We don't know if anything will come of it." But Sam just grinned. "You wait and see. This is just the beginning." After leaving the hospital, Lucy went straight to the practice room. She had 3 hours before. It would be used by someone else. She sat at the piano, flexed her fingers, and began to play. Time disappeared when Lucy played. The world outside faded away. There was only the music, flowing from her mind through her fingers to the keys. She had forgotten how good this feeling was, how right. Even when she made mistakes, even when her fingers stumbled over a difficult passage, she felt more alive at the piano than anywhere else. She was deep in the middle of a Bach prelude when the door opened. Lucy stopped playing and turned. Nancy Baker stood there listening. "Don't stop on my account," Nancy said. "That sounded beautiful." Lucy smiled. "Thank you. I didn't know you were coming today." Nancy walked into the room and sat in a chair near the piano. "I wanted to check on your progress. Recording session is next week, and I like to be prepared." "I'm ready," Lucy said, with more confidence than she felt. "At least I think I am." Nancy nodded. "Play the Rachmaninoff for me." "Piece you played that night at the restaurant." Lucy turned back to the piano and took a deep breath. Then she began to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. It was a challenging piece, meant for piano and orchestra. But Lucy poured everything into her playing, trying to make the piano sound like many instruments at once. When she finished, Her forehead was damp with sweat, and her arms ached pleasantly. She looked at Nancy. "Much better than 2 months ago," Nancy said with approval. "Your technique is coming back. Your hands are stronger. But more importantly, you still have that special quality when you play, that emotion that can't be taught." Lucy felt relieved. "So we're still on for next week?" "Absolutely. Studio's booked for 3 days. We'll record all the pieces we discussed, and maybe try a few others if time allows." Nancy leaned forward. "I've also invited a few people to listen. It's nothing formal, just some friends in the industry who might be interested in your story." Lucy's nervousness returned. "What kind of people? A music critic from the Times? A couple of concert promoters? The dean of admissions from Juilliard?" Nancy said this last part casually, but her eyes were watching Lucy's reaction. "Juilliard?" Lucy's voice was barely a whisper. "Why would the dean come? Because I told him about you? About how you had to leave school when your parents died? About your brother? About how you kept your talent alive even while working as a waitress?" Nancy smiled. He was intrigued. "And he mentioned that there might be a way for you to finish your degree if you were interested." Lucy didn't know what to say. Going back to Juilliard had seemed impossible for so long that she had stopped allowing herself to even think about it. "But Sam is getting better," Nancy finished for her, "and will hopefully have his transplant soon. Lucy, you've put your life on hold for 3 years. You've been an amazing sister. No one could have done more. But maybe it's time to think about your future too." Lucy looked down at her hands resting on the piano keys. These hands that had served food and washed dishes. These hands that had held Sam's when he was in pain. These hands that could create music that moved people to tears. "I'll think about it," she said finally. Nancy stood up. "That's all I'm asking now. Play me the Chopin. It's the Ballade in G minor. That's going to be the centerpiece of our recording." Lucy turned back to the piano. As she began to play, she let her mind wander to a future she had thought was lost. A future with music at its center. A future where both she and Sam could live their dreams. For the first time in 3 years, that future didn't seem impossible anymore. It seemed just within reach. 1 year later, Lucy stood backstage at Lincoln Center, her heart racing. She smoothed down the front of her long blue dress and took a deep breath. Through the curtain, she could hear the murmur of the audience as they found their seats. This was nothing like playing at the Silver Spoon. This was a real concert hall with hundreds of people waiting to hear her play. Nervous, asked a familiar voice behind her. Lucy turned to see Nancy Baker standing there, looking elegant in a black suit. Terrified, Lucy admitted. Nancy smiled. "You'll be fine. You've been practicing for months. And remember, most of the people out there already love your music. They bought your album. It was still strange to think about." Lucy Morgan had an album. Hidden Talent had been released 4 months ago, and the response had been better than anyone expected. The story of the waitress pianist had captured people's imagination. The music critic from the Times had written a glowing review, calling Lucy a remarkable talent with emotional depth beyond her years. Online music sites had shared her story. The album had sold thousands of copies, mostly digital downloads, but some physical CDs too. And now, here she was, about to give her first real concert. 5 minutes, Ms. Morgan," said a stagehand passing by. Lucy nodded. She closed her eyes and thought about how much had changed in just 1 year. Sam had received his kidney transplant 6 months ago. His surgery had gone well, and he was recovering nicely. He was even talking about going back to college next fall. He was sitting in the front row tonight, along with Mr. Peterson and some of the staff from the Silver Spoon. Richard Hayes would be there too, with his wife. He had become something of a mentor to Lucy, helping her navigate the business side of her new career. And yes, it was a career now. After the album's success, Lucy had officially quit her job as a waitress. He had also, with Nancy's encouragement, applied to return to Juilliard. The dean had been at her recording session, just as Nancy had promised, and had been impressed enough to offer Lucy a scholarship to complete her final year. She was taking classes now, fitting them around her, practice schedule, and performances. "It's time," Nancy said, touching Lucy's arm gently. Lucy opened her eyes and nodded. She walked to the side of the stage and waited for her introduction. Her mouth felt dry. Her palms were sweaty. You can do this, she whispered to herself. Mom and Dad? For Sam. For yourself. The announcer's voice came through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, Harmony Records is proud to present, in her Lincoln Center debut, pianist Lucy Morgan. The audience applauded as Lucy walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, making it hard to see the faces watching her. But she knew they were there. She approached the grand piano in the center of the stage, took a small bow, and sat down. For a moment, she was back at the Silver Spoon, a tired waitress being forced to play for a room of rich strangers. How scared she had been that night. How unsure. That night had changed everything. Lucy placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. She started with Batch, the composer who had been with her the longest. The complex, mathematical beauty of his music had always spoken to her, even as a child. Her fingers moved surely over the keys, finding each note exactly where it should be. The audience was silent, listening. Lucy could feel their attention like a physical thing. But instead of making her more nervous, it gave her strength. These people had come to hear her play. They wanted to be part of the music she was creating. After Bach came Chopin, the Ballade in G minor, the piece that had become her signature after the album's release. It was passionate and dramatic, with quiet moments that suddenly burst into storms of notes. Lucy poured her heart into it, thinking of all she had been through. The loss of her parents, the struggle to care for Sam, the years of setting aside her own dreams. The unexpected second chance. When she finished the Chopin, the audience erupted in applause. Lucy stood and bowed, smiling through happy tears that threatened to fall. But she wasn't finished yet. She sat back down at the piano for her final piece. This one wasn't on the program. It was a surprise even to Nancy. Lucy had been working on it secretly for months. Her fingers began to move, playing the opening notes of an original composition. She had called it The Waitress, a musical story of her journey from serving tables to sitting on this stage. The piece began simply. The repeating pattern that suggested routine, sameness, days flowing one into another. Then came a section of discord, representing the night at the restaurant when everything changed. The music grew more complex, building and shifting, sometimes returning to that early simplicity before moving into something new and beautiful. As Lucy played the final notes of her composition, she felt a sense of completion. The music faded away, leaving the concert hall in perfect silence for one breathless moment. Then the audience was on its feet, applauding louder than before. Lucy stood and bowed again. She looked toward the front row and saw Sam standing there, clapping and grinning with pride. Beside him was Mr. Peterson, looking slightly out of place in his best suit, but clapping enthusiastically. Richard Hayes was nodding with satisfaction, as if he had known all along this would happen. After several bows, Lucy left the stage. Backstage, Nancy was waiting with a huge smile. That was incredible, Nancy said, hugging her. Especially that last piece. Why didn't you tell me you were composing? Lucy smiled. I wanted to surprise you. You think people liked it? Liked it? They loved it? And so will many more when we add it to your next album. Nancy's eyes were bright with excitement. The director from the Chicago Symphony Orchestra is here. He wants to talk about you performing with them next season. Lucy's eyes widened. Really? That's amazing. This is just the beginning, Nancy said, echoing what Sam had said a year ago. Now, get ready. There are a lot of people waiting to meet you at the reception. Later that night, after the reception, after the congratulations and the handshakes and the business cards from people who wanted to work with her, Lucy went home to her new apartment. It was small, but nice, with large windows and, most importantly, enough room for a piano. She changed out of her concert dress into comfortable clothes and sat at her piano. Not to practice, but just to be near it. This instrument that had been her first love, the instrument that had saved her and Sam when they needed it most. Lucy thought about the path that had brought her here. If the regular pianist hadn't gotten sick that night at the Silver Spoon, if Mr. Peterson hadn't remembered seeing her look at the piano, if Richard Hayes hadn't insisted she play, how different her life would be. She placed her fingers gently on the keys, but didn't press down. Sometimes the most beautiful music was the kind you held inside, the kind that played in your heart. Lucy Morgan, once a waitress, now a pianist, smiled to herself in the quiet of her apartment. Before her, full of possibilities and music, and she was ready to play.